Okay, Spring Boot. So we'll talk about what Spring Boot is and why Spring Boot is in fact a useful thing. And we'll see how we can get started with Spring Boot and building a web application using Spring Boot. So we've been actually building web application using Spring Boot, so this is nothing really new. And we'll talk about auto configuration and Spring application class and external configuration and actuator and some miscellaneous features. Okay, so what is and why Spring Boot? So when you are building typical web applications, so these are the things that you need to do. So you have to choose build tool, Maven, Gradle, Ant, and then you have to actually put lots of build information into those files. Build files in those the build schemes, and then you are going to build Spring MVC application, and then so these are the technologies that you need. So Spring MVC, JPA is for Spring Data, JSP or Timely for the template technology, and then you need a database server, then you need the app server, you need some kind of a testing and logging, and then so these are the pieces that you need to in fact configure. Okay. So there are lots of chores you have to do. So you have to write a build script for Maven, Gradle, and then you have to actually make sure all the modules are in fact matched to each other. The version matching is such a chore because if you're dealing with lots of dependencies, the making sure those versions are in fact synced up is a huge headache. And then you have to configure all of these beans in Spring application, right? You have to actually auto scan. Sometimes you have to actually declare these beans, and you have to wire all those things. Then you have to configure, and then you have to actually start the server. Then you have to actually start the database server as well. And then you have to write, and then in many cases for production environment, you have to actually write the management and monitoring features built into your application. So basically, many boilerplate chores need to be done for building Spring application. So Spring Boot is designed to solve these manual chores, to reduce these manual chores. So it provides a radically faster and widely accessible getting started experience for all Spring development. So basically it automates the manual chores that we mentioned in the previous slide. Okay. It is opinionated out of the box. What that means is that it just assumes lots of things for you, but if you are defining your own thing, then it quickly gets out of the way so that you can use your own things. Okay. And it provides a range of non-functional features that are common to majority projects like embedded servers and securities and matrix and health checks and externalized configuration. So these are the features that we're going to actually talk about a little bit in the rest of the presentation. It doesn't generate any code whatsoever. Okay, and it doesn't require any XML configuration. So getting started with the Spring Boot, basically in your pom.xml file. So we're going to just deal with the Maven. In your pom.xml file, you are going to start with the startup parent pom. Okay, and it will actually include lots of things. So this is the list of packages the startup parent will include for you, and these modules are all synced up, and they actually make sure everything is actually synced up, everything is best practices. In fact, and all the basic modules are in fact included. Okay. Then Spring Boot has a lot of child starters. Okay, so if you want to actually include actuator feature, then you can just add actuator the dependency. If you want AMQP protocol implementation, you just add it. If you want AOP, you add AOP starter, batch editor, cloud connectors, and Elasticsearch, Gemfire, and we actually worked with the Stata Data JPA yesterday, right? If you want the MongoDB, you just add Stata Data MongoDB. Okay, so basically you just add this starter, child starter in your pom.xml file. Then again, it will make sure all the right pieces are in fact included. They will be included and they will be configured for you. Okay, and this is really lifesaver in my opinion. Okay, so building a web application using Spring Boot. So this is what we have done so far. You create a project with a proper starter, and then you write controllers, domains, and services, meaning you write code, and you write the application class, meaning configuration class, then you build and run. Okay, so basically you are going to, if you're building web application, you are going to add Spring Boot starter web starter. Okay. And typical Spring application, Spring MVC application will have, the main project and the root. You have a configuration file and main application. Then you have a domain classes, and then you have, so maybe some cases you might want to have a domain class, and then you want to have a repository package. So, typically you will have repository package, services package, controllers package, and domains package, and then you have other main packages. Okay. Okay, and then you're going to write the main class. So here, basically, you're going to write the configuration, enable auto configuration, component scan. So these three things are the same thing as Spring Boot application annotation as we talked about, right? Okay. And then you're going to build and run. So if you're building within an IDE, IDE handles everything for you. But if you want to build at the command line, what you can do is a Maven package, and then you can actually run that WAR file like a jar-jar, and then target myweb.war file. Or if you want to run it as the jar file, you could do that as well. Okay, so let's talk about the auto configuration. So auto configuration is basically done by Spring Boot starter. Okay, so it basically figures out what you need by looking at the class path. Okay, so let me just read these things. Spring Boot auto configuration attempts to automatically configure your Spring application based on jar dependencies that you have added. So depending on the dependencies that you have specified in the pom.xml file, it will add all the right modules and it will configure for you. For example, if HSQLDB dependency is in your class path, then you will not manually configure any database connection beans. Then in-memory in-memory database gets automatically configured. Okay, if you include Tomcat embedded jar in your class path, then Tomcat embedded servlet container factory gets automatically configured. Unless you have defined your own embedded servlet container factory bean, maybe you want to use Jetty, right? So in that case, you can just specify that dependency, then it will use the Jetty server instead of the embedded Tomcat. Okay, and then you need to opt in to auto configuration. So in order to have this auto configuration to be triggered, you have to add enable auto configuration annotation. Okay, or you have to specify, or you can say Spring Boot application annotation. Okay, so either one, and basically Spring Boot application annotation is including the enable auto configuration annotation, right? So this enable auto configuration is the one that you indicate to the Spring Boot that I want auto configured application. Okay, so auto configuration tries to be as intelligent as possible but non-invasive. So as I said before, it will back away as you define more of your own configuration. Okay, so for example, if you add your own data source bean, the default embedded database support will back away. So it will use whatever you configured. Okay, you can always manually exclude any default configuration that you don't want to apply. Okay. Auto configuration is always applied after user defined beans have been registered. So if you have defined, for example, like a data source bean, then it will, auto configuration will be done after that. So it will not actually configure the default ones. If you want to find out what auto configuration is currently being applied, then you can start the application with a --debug. Then it will actually give you a log file, giving you all the auto configuration report. Okay, and you can also actually find out from the web, using actuator. Okay, so I'm going to actually demonstrate that in a few minutes. Enable auto configuration. So basically, auto configuration classes. So auto configuration will actually use, in a sense, a child, the configuration annotation. So data source auto configuration, Hibernate JPA auto configuration, JPA repositories auto configuration, embedded servlet container auto configuration, web MVC auto configuration. So it will actually use a lot of other, the configuration annotation to configure it. Okay. Again, you can manually exclude configuration. So in this case, you do not want data source auto configuration to be kicked in. So in that case, you can just say exclude. Okay, assuming you are going to provide your own. Okay, Spring Application Class. So, Spring Application Class is the one that we have run like this. Basically, the Spring Application and .run, then you provide the configuration class and command line arguments, right? You can also actually set some of the options to the Spring Application before you run it. So here we have an application object, okay? And then you can show the banner. If you want to show the banner, well, actually, the banner is going to be showed automatically. So the banner is, when you run the application, then it actually shows the Spring Boot, all that things, right? Yeah, yeah. So you see the Spring Boot things. If you do not want it, then you can set show banner false. Okay. And in fact, there are a lot of other things that you can configure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hold a second. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay, so that is the Spring application. So the Spring application will bootstrap and launch Spring application from Java main method by performing these steps. So the first thing it does is in fact creating appropriate application context object. Okay. So we could actually create our context object ourselves, but this is done by Spring application itself, and it does a lot of other things like register of command line property source, that to expose the command line arguments as the Spring properties, and it can refresh the application context, loading all singleton beans, and then trigger any command line run of beans. So basically, it does these initial chores for you. Okay. But the most important thing is in fact creating appropriate application context object. Okay. Okay, moving forward. Application property files. So Spring application will try to load properties from property files in the following. Yeah, so it will search for this application the properties file from these locations: config subdirectory of current directory, or current directory, or class path config directory, or class path root. Okay, so if you actually see config subdirectory, yeah, so basically in our application, we have those files under here, right? The SRC main resources. So this application properties file is actually found because of this class path root. Okay, but you can certainly create a config subdirectory and include it, and that will be searched first. Okay. Okay, moving forward. So yeah, we already know how to build a Spring MVC application, so I'm not going to actually do this. External configuration. So in addition to application.properties file, you can actually have other configuration files. So those files could be properties files, YAML files, or those could be environment variables, or could be command line arguments. So basically, it does have a lot of ways to externalize the configuration. Okay, and the property value could be injected in your beans using value notation. That's something that we have seen before, right? Okay. Now, these are the property order, meaning these are the ways that you can actually provide some properties. So you can provide property at the command line as command line arguments. It could be from JNDI attributes. It could be system properties. It could be operating system environment variables, or it could be random value property source that only has properties in random, or it could be, let's say, profile specific application properties outside of your packaged jar. So application name of the profile, properties, and YAML variants. So it could be, so if you have profile DEF or production, then it could be application-production.properties. And it could be YAML, and yeah, so many different ways that you can include properties. And the last one here is the property source annotations in your the config classes. So this example we have seen several times, right? Okay. Let's see, and you can also actually set default properties using Spring application .set default properties. You provide the default property key value pairs. So property can be in fact specified in many locations, in many ways. Okay, so that is external configuration. Yeah, I don't have a lab yet. Okay, so that's the reason you don't find the lab. Now let me talk about the actuator. This is something I'm going to actually demonstrate. Yeah, so basically actuator is for monitoring and managing application in production environment. So in your production environment, you like to know what is going on. So typically you might want to have JMS enabled manage the resource, and sometimes you want to actually use a remote shell to do that, right? Okay, so Spring Boot includes a number of additional features that help you to monitor and manage your application when it's pushed to the production. And you can actually use the multiple schemes to manage and monitor. For example, you can use HTTP endpoint, and that's basically what we are going to use. And you could use JMX. In that case, you probably have to have JMX managed resource in your application, and or you can even use remote shell. Okay, and auditing, health, and matrix scattering can be automatically applied to your application. And actuator HTTP endpoints are only available with Spring MVC based application, and that's what we are going to use. So in order to have actuator feature, only thing you have to do is basically to add this stutter, actuator stutter, in your pom.xml file. Okay, so let's talk about some of the endpoints that are automatically included if you add this actuator. Okay, so for example, it auto config beans. You can find out all the beans, and you can find all the auto configuration report. Config properties, you can find out all the configuration properties. You can dump the thread environment, all the environment properties, and health and info and things like that. So so this is a continuation. Matrix, you can actually shut down the application. You can kill the application, and you can take a look at the trace information of the last few HTTP requests. Okay, now these reports are all in JSON format. So if you want to see this JSON format in pretty format, then you want to actually have this one in your application properties file. HTTP mapper JSON pretty print equal true. Okay, so these are the examples. So auto config and health and matrix and traces and things like that. So I'm going to just demonstrate that. Okay, other features, you can actually do these things using the remote shell, the logging, NoSQL, WebSockets, a bunch of other features are provided. I am going to just do the lab, actually demonstration. So let me see. I think I have some application that I have already. Yeah, so I think I have this. If you take a look at the pom.xml file, I have actuator included. Yeah, so I have included this actuator. Okay, so I'm gonna just click to stop the existing application, and I am going to run this application. Can I find what it is? Oh, why is that? Submit applications. What do you mean that you don't find it? Okay, so I'm gonna try a different one. So I'm gonna just I'm gonna just copy this guy, and let's do Spring Security application that we just worked with, and complete. And on the pom.xml file, we are going to just add this dependency. Oops. Okay. And save, and let's make sure, and complete, and run as, and application. I'm still in the course. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Okay, so now it's actually starting. Okay, so started. So we are going to, we'll try to perform few operations. Okay, so go to 88. So I'm gonna just try this. Okay, sang and sign in or something like that. Now we're gonna actually take a look at the so let's take a look at the health. So it should say just up, and this shows the disk space. And how about the beans? It will give me all the beans that are configured in this application. Okay, what about the traces? Oops, is that trace? Yeah, I think it should be trace. Okay, so this is the trace of the sum of the methods. And what about the matrix? I want to actually see matrix. Yeah, matrix. So it gave me information about the memory and all kinds of information. Okay, and let's see what else can we do. Let's see. Yeah, so this is now pretty format. So let's actually take a look at the pretty format. So here, I think I have this one. Yeah, so this is the one you can. I'm gonna copy this guy, and here properties, application properties, and then I'm going to add here and save it, and let me just stop it again, and then let's run it again. Okay, run as and Java application, and okay, so you're gonna see the matrix. Okay, go to. Okay, so let's see the matrix. Okay, I want to see matrix. Matrix. Oh, oh yeah, I think I have text login, I guess. Yeah, it is a security application. Okay, now I have a matrix. Okay, so okay, hold a second. Guys, let me just take this phone call. Oh, hi. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So you can see the matrix, and what else can you see? Health, we did the health. Yeah, so auto configuration. So this is where you can find out all the auto configuration information. Auto config. Okay, so these are the things that have been configured for you. Okay. All right, so that I think give you a sense of how things work, right? Okay, so let me just